How's it going, everybody? Hopefully you can hear me okay. I think the audio is a little bit high. I messed with a couple of settings, but I think this should be good. We'll see. If the audio is terrible as usual, please help. It's kind of sometimes hard to know what everybody else sees, or what everyone hears, I guess I should say. But cool. Well, thank you all for joining. We got 5 people on here early, so. But this is, I don't know if this will be our new time. I kind of accidentally teased everywhere that this was going to be at 7 p.m., even though 7:30 had been our time, because I can't remember things and I decided not to write things down. So, but just like last week, we have our same guest, and I believe now would be safe to say co-host. I think that's a fair description. So we have Mr. Conner Eisenmenger. I will put him on the screen now. So you can go ahead
Well, look at that.
There you go.
Hey.
So you can introduce yourself again, maybe.
Oh, yeah, why don't I do that? That's totally fine. So, hello, world. My name is Conner Eisenmenger. I am a guest turned regular on the Low Brass U stream hang. I'm a trombone player and a euphonium player, and teach public school out in the old Seattle public schools. And yeah, there you have it.
Awesome. So now we got both of us on the screen here. Wait, what time is it for you? I'm in the central time zone. Conner is in the Pacific time zone. So Conner is a little bit ahead of, or a little bit behind all of us. But he'll catch up.
A little bit behind.
He'll catch up.
Which is fine.
He'll catch
I'll
up.
get there.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've got a M Jeffrey 152155.
Shout out to M. Jeffrey. I will not say your first name on the stream like some other inconsiderate people might, but
right.
It's glad to have you.
I do have that record for you, M. Jeffrey. So, but yeah, also I'm going to turn my gain down just a little bit. But cool. So one interesting thing before we get into some topics, we've got some Instagram questions, and we've got one follow-over question from last week that was right as we were closing. But we have a Discord channel now, or Discord server, I believe is the correct terminology. I'm not that old, I promise. But yeah, so I'm going to drop the Discord link in the chat, and I'm not exactly sure where the Discord server will go, but I assume it will go somewhere. So I'm going to invite some people, copy, and we will have, can I pin things like Instagram, or is that not a thing?
I have no idea.
Let's see, can I pin message? Yes, we are living in the future.
Whoa. That looks cool.
So if you would like to be part of the Low Brass U Discord server, we will be active on there as well. So right now it's in its infancy, but we'll get it up and going. So I think it might make sense to start with our question from last time that we ended with, which I'm not sure who asked it. I probably should have saved that. That would have been wise in retrospect. But yes, so I think our question was something along the lines of, what's a good trombone for jazz? Am I remembering that correctly, Conner?
That sounds right. I couldn't even remember. I thought it was like, what's a good trombone? But I think it was specifically for jazz.
I think so. So I think it might make sense for maybe both of us to talk about the instruments that we've had. That's maybe a good starting point for playing jazz. Do you want to go first, Conner?
Yeah, I can go. I'm trying to think back to maybe, why don't I go backwards? It's probably better if I just go backwards, because I can remember what I'm using right now a lot more clearly. So my normal jazz trombone, which I would say is my go-to, which I've fallen back in love with, is just an Edwards small bore. And if we were talking, as the crow flies, just by its structural dimensions, it's pretty similar to a King 3B, which would be another pretty good choice, I think, for a jazz trombone. And then other than that, I've used a King 2B Jigs Wiggum, which is slightly different than the regular 2B in that the It's not dual bore. It's straight 491, if I'm remembering those numbers correctly. I bet Zach probably knows better than I do. Is that correct?
I believe that to be correct.
Okay. So 2B is great. 3B is fine. Any of those kings with the numbers on them, that's cool. And then before that, I had a super olds or olds super. I've heard it described both ways. Olds is the model, or olds is the make. Super is the model. I should say that very clearly. So the manufacturer is olds, and then the particular trombone we're talking about is the super. That was cool. You're really rolling the dice every time that you play one of those because it had a dodecahedral slide, or however you say, a 12-sided prism. So when you break it, it's broken forever. It is no one's got the tools to fix that, or at least it's not worth the cost of the entire instrument.
I don't think I knew that it was. I'm sure we must have talked about that when that was your main thing. But I think I had forgotten about the dodecahedron slide. So that's like the end of the slide is dodecahedron, like
the entire length of the slide is the 12-sided prism up until the stocking. The stocking is flush, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of the fluted slide. The reason that they did that, fluted being another word for just being a 12-sided prism as opposed to being a cylinder, was less surface area, the theory being less contact, less friction, faster slide. I don't know. I mean, it was pretty old trombone by the time it got to me. Like, it had bigger issues than slide.
Why not just make it a triangle then?
Right. It's like, what are we doing here? But that was fine. I mean, it was a totally cool horn, and that horn ended up going off to play in the United States Army Field Band Jazz Ambassadors without me. But hey, it made some really, really good noises there. And I actually have a Super Olds again now. I'm a big fan of those horns. And before that, I played on a student Bach, like the one you get in 6th grade band for a long time. And I had a Yamaha Zeno, which is not a jazz trombone, or I had the large bore version, but that was just the horn that I had. So it's really just the horn that you got at the moment. That's probably the best horn, but that's some of the ones that I've used in the past.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good way of describing that. It's kind of the horn that you have is kind of the best one. But I assume that who asked that question, that's not the answer that they want. But I think it's still worth kind of repeating that, you don't always need a new horn. You don't always, I know the shiny thing is shiny, but sometimes just using what you have is kind of a good approach also. So I guess my kind of order, so when I was in high school, I was kind of more of just a tuba player, and then I started playing trombone. So I started on a school horn, and I had a Con 88H from school, and that was the instrument that I played everything. I played lead trombone on that. I used that for basically everything, and then I switched to a different Con 88H when someone graduated, I think, and I was able to get go from a closed wrap to an open wrap because the trombone forums told me that was better. And the trombone forums are always 100% right, if you didn't know.
Always.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They are always exactly 100% right. Anything that someone says on the internet has to be 100% true. So anyway, I played that, and then I got the custom Edwards that Conner now wields. That instrument I went to the shop and picked up in 2010, I believe. I'd have to double check those numbers, but I think 2010 was when I got that instrument. Or I guess I actually take that back. I forgot my 6H. I had my 6H before that. So I want to say I got the 6H like 6 or 8 months before the Edwards. Probably, not the most adult way of doing it, of getting a horn and then immediately getting another. But I didn't know any better, and at that time in my head, I thought the Con 6H was... I got it for $300 on eBay, sight unseen, and I think that horn is worth more than that. I think it would go for at least 6 or maybe even 7. I know there are a lot of those horns out there, but I think that it's a decent shape one. I think it sat for most of its life. But anyway, so I got that horn for $300, and then I got that custom Edwards, and then I guess I sold the custom. I guess I went back to the 6H. Became my main horn again sometime in undergrad. I want to say like sophomore or junior year, I started playing it exclusively. Not exactly sure on that, but at least by junior year, I was playing it exclusively. And then I decided that I wanted something. I kind of decided that I wanted something different, but I wasn't really sure. And then in grad school, I was kind of loaning out that Edwards to people. Like my wife was using it she used it on her senior recital at UNT. And then, I think around that, after that, at some point, I kind of loaned it to you, and you were playing on it for a while, and then it became a longer loan. And eventually you bought that. And then I started playing the 16 a little bit later. The Box 16, LT16M, which is like the Bill Watrous model. So that horn is a 509, not 508 because it matters. 509. It's kind of silly because it's like most of them are 508s, and then there are 509s in that model, and then like Wrath, I think their larger small bore is a 510, which is kind of odd.
That sounds right.
I think most of them are like carryovers from millimeters. Like I think a lot of them have standard millimeter numbers, like whole numbers. But anyway, so I started playing the 16. I would say that the 16 is my main instrument right now. It's what I do the majority of my work on. But I also have and play a Bach 36. And that 36 is a sterling silver bell with a lightweight slide. So that's technically a medium bore, but there definitely are plenty of people who are playing larger horns even than that in the space of jazz art music. That's definitely a thing that people are using. So I think that any horn can work, especially if your focus is improvisation and small group playing. I don't think that there's a horn that you can go wrong with, assuming it's an instrument that works for you. And that's the main thing for that. If you're playing in a big band, depending on what share, depending on the situation, I wouldn't say it's quite so simple as a horn that you sound good on. If I'm playing lead, I generally want a smaller horn. I don't know if you have any comments about that, Connor.
About playing a smaller horn when you're playing lead?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's when I was getting really, really serious about figuring out what I sounded like as a lead trombone player. I've definitely experimented with smaller setups, both physically on my face and also with different horn setups. And, I think you can definitely make it work on a larger setup, but I found myself dramatically more comfortable the smaller that I got. And then I realized something about myself is that I don't really enjoy, or I love playing on big setups. I think it's a ton of fun, but I think that I sound most like myself on something smaller than I was allowing myself to creatively, particularly when I was in school. It was very fashionable to play on the biggest setup that you could at the time. So something to be said about trying all different types.
Yeah, I think that that's a big part of it too, because you're going to get people who have the answer for you, and sometimes they do have the answer, and you're not ready to hear it. Sometimes they have the answer, but it's actually not the answer, or it's not the answer for you then, or it is the answer for you then, but it's not the answer for you 5 years from now. So it's definitely tricky, but to kind of bring this full circle, you don't need to spend an arm and a leg on an instrument. But some of the best brands probably are, just in no particular order, are going to be, Bach, Conn, Edwards, Shires, Wrath, leaving some out, I'm sure, of like the bigger brands. Who am I leaving out, Connor?
Are you counting King as part of Conn Selmer?
I didn't. I mean, it is, but no, I meant to say King also.
There you go.
King. Those are kind of the most common. There are obviously others, and there are more boutique manufacturers too, and just because you don't see a lot of their horns doesn't make them bad. And in fact, sometimes if you don't see a lot of their horns, that's because they only make really, really nice horns, and they only make them every once in a while, or they only can make 2 a year. That's the sort of thing that happens. So there's like the Lawler trombones of the world that there are only so many that one person can make. In a time period, so that's definitely a part of it. But good. So maybe now, I guess M. Jeffrey has a comment. He says he remembers eating pizza in Chicago while Conner was trying to pay the right person on the internet for that, Edwards. Was that like a Venmo deal or something, or a PayPal thing? What was the...
That was before the time of Venmo, I'm pretty sure, or like before when Venmo was in fashion. And I don't know. That doesn't make any sense because it would have been you. You would have been the person to pay on the internet.
Well, maybe you were trying
Edwards,
to...
right?
Maybe what he means is you were trying to find the right Zach Marley on the internet or something.
Oh, that's entirely possible. Maybe by the time, yeah. It took me forever to pay you for that trombone. So I bet by the time I paid you the final installment for that horn, Venmo might have, there might have been enough of an entire technological, ideological shift may have happened in the time it took me to pay for that trombone. That's what we'll say.
That's all right. But
that being said, a word of advice: if you are going to sell a horn on the internet, make sure they're good for the money just up front. Don't do these payment plan things. It's going to be way too tricky. So,
right. That was a special case. I wouldn't do that with most people.
I appreciate that. I would do the same for you, but
right.
If you're selling it to Johnny on the street, Oh, so I was trying to find the right Zach Marley. That is exactly what it was. So it was. There you go.
And yeah, I think with that, part of with selling it that way, selling it to you, I kind of have like a right of refusal if you sell it to someone else, which was kind of something that I wanted. I mean, not that you can't ever sell to someone else, but we've talked about it many times that, if you're going to sell, at least, talk to me first. I might want that horn back.
Yes, we are. In some ways, we're co-parenting this trombone.
There you go.
A little bit.
And I would like that. I would like that trombone back, but it would probably be my third most played small bore at this point, or horn for jazz, I should say. I don't need that back, and I don't really want it back. I mean, I do want it back, but not.
There might come a time.
There might come a time, but we'll see how that story unfolds. But yeah, so we have one question from Mr. Jared. How do you guys work on your time and rhythm? That's a good question. So I guess there are lots of different ways to go about it, and I kind of go back and forth between a few different things. It depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about, playing like more, I guess not necessarily classical music, but thinking of music that's written down. One of the ways that I work on my rhythm, I don't know that we've talked about this, Conner, but maybe we have, is...
We've definitely talked about this.
Okay, you already know where I'm going. So I record myself, and then I slow it down to 50%. Have we talked about this? Yes. So one of the values of slowing it down to 50% is that it's not exactly working on your time and rhythm, but it's exposing it. Because I think a lot of it is just not knowing. It's like someone's like, oh, you're rushing that. And if you trust them, like if it's your teacher, you're like, I probably am rushing that. But sometimes someone could say you're rushing that and you're not rushing it. Maybe they're dragging. And, you don't necessarily, there's not a clear winner in those sorts of situations. So what I do in my own practice, I slow it down to 50%, which there are tons of tools that you can do it. You can do it on your phone in all kinds of different ways. But if you're a hair off, that hair becomes pretty noticeable when you go to half tempo because the error is doubled, so it's easier to notice. And so I kind of go back and forth with that and kind of check my time that way. And then eventually I can kind of realize what my issue is and I can probably fix it. And once you get it kind of close, a lot of times it'll kind of work itself out. Do you have any advice, Conner?
Yeah, I've got some things, maybe probably more of the jazz persuasion of things of how to work on time. And so, I'll say one for written music. If I'm working on things like excerpts or solo literature, particularly excerpts, I will play Jedi mind tricks with the metronome. And so like the two biggest ones that I do is seeing like how small can I divide the rhythm, or how low of a metronome setting can I set this to and still keep the time. So if the excerpt is at 160 beats per minute, maybe you've got the metronome on 40 and you're just getting the downbeats, or you can take that down to 20 and see if your macro time is clear. Then the other way to do that, of course, is to hyper subdivide. They say, what's the wise adage the philosopher once told us in college of Always hear the smallest subdivision of the excerpt at all times in your head while you're playing it. People say that. I don't do it. That's probably why I don't play in an orchestra. I try. That's fun. But yeah, definitely recording is important. You know, if we weren't trombone players and tuba players, if we were supermodels, we would look in the mirror and check our hair. And so we should do the exact same thing as brass musicians. You know, you need to know what you sound like. And sometimes it's one thing to say, hey, you're rushing. It's another thing to deeply understand like which part of the beat you don't like, if it's an articulation issue, if you're just not blowing through the passage, if things are being obscured in really, really micro sorts of ways, you know, unless you actually hear it, you know, it's one thing someone can say, hey, you're rushing beat 4. It's a whole different thing to be like, wow, I heard it, and then correct it.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it. And kind of going along with that, one of the apps that I use is called Time Guru, and it does cost some money. I can't tell you how much now because I bought it maybe in 2011 or something. I don't know. Had it for a long time. It looks kind of like this. If you can kind of see that, there's probably a better way of showing an app than just holding up my phone. But
no, that's it.
But it has a couple kind of cool features built in. Like you can set it to gradually disappear. So you could have like 16th note subdivisions like ducka 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 ducka, and then they start slowly slipping away, and you could set it to like 80% of them are gone. So it'll be, you know, ga 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 ga, you know, and just like it'll give you every other one. So you kind of have to like fill in all the gaps, and you don't know when it's going to give you that lifeline, which I think that's been really helpful to me. And it's nice because you can build really complex metronomes. So I have like a Ride of the Valkyries setting, and so it'll have, you know, that rhythm, dun 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 dun, and it'll just loop that over and over again. You can set up all kinds of crazy things where you have a loop that's like, you know, 3 septuplets, 2 triplet half notes, 1/8 rest, then, you know, just things that like obviously you would never need, or maybe not never. You know, we have some mutual friends for their music, we might need that. But, you know, for the most part, you don't need that, and it's not going to be super important. But it can. The point is, it can do anything that you want it to do, and pretty much more. So I think it's a great app, and I think it was only like $3 or $4 a few years ago. Who knows if that's the same price? I bought it once, and that's about it. So I think it's a pretty good app to have. And, you know, for things like metronome and tuners, you know, I don't pay for very many apps on my phone. But, you know, like I'm not paying for games or something like that, or like in-app purchases in a game, things like, you know, that's not a thing that I'm going to do. But I will pay for a metronome. I will pay for a tuner. You know, things like iRealB, which is another valuable tool for some jazz stuff. But I think that's worth mentioning too. Let's see here. Hello, Zach. How's it going? Zach's a regular. I think he was on last time when you were on here, Connor.
I think so.
David M says, this Con 72H I use for jazz has a crack in the bell and a crack on the brace. More worried about that crack in the bell than the crack in the brace, but both of those are kind of concerning. And David has to fix the string on it every time. Yeah, I don't like string rotors. I know that, like, you know, professional French horn players use them. They're not really on any professional, like, top-tier instruments for trombone that I can think of. Maybe, you know, I'm sure someone can correct me of some, you know, obscure German horn that hasn't made its way to the States. But for the most part, I don't think that those, you know, I think those are more on intermediate horns, which the 72H is kind of in that category. But yeah, the string ones are trouble. I think I've told this story on stream, and I'm sure I've told Connor this also. But there was a concert in high school before I had a horn, and so this is in the Con 88H days. And, you know, sitting down, we're about to start the big band concert, and, you know, go for a tuning note, and, you know, I'm a little bit sharp. And so I go to pull out the tuning slide, and what do? I break the soldering. The horn is useless until it gets worked on. So I had to then go and grab another horn, and so I just grabbed like one of the marching silver, you know, nickel silver Yamahas that we had, and I then played that for a while, and then I used the trigger once in a solo, I think, or something, and the string broke. Actually, I know exactly what it was. We did like a combo tune, and we played Just Squeeze Me. I remember like it was yesterday. And probably in the melody, I used the trigger at some point, since that tune's in F. And yeah, it broke, and then I borrowed my assistant principal's horn, which I know it's a weird thing to say, but the assistant principal was a trombone player at my high school, and we didn't have enough people, so he played in the section. So I borrowed his Minnick 88H actually to get through the rest of that tune, because it was just a combo thing, and the rest of the big band was sitting there. So I borrowed his trombone, so we're now up to 3 trombones for the night. And then obviously once we go back to big band, I had to grab another horn. And I went back to the band room and just grabbed something. I just band director just tossed me these keys, and I went and grabbed another one. And I grabbed some student model horn and played High Maintenance by Gordon Goodwin to finish out the night.
There you go. That just proves the adage: the horn that you need sometimes is the horn in your hand.
Right. So definitely an interesting time for sure. But let's see. So Ivan says, I started playing in a group again, and I find it hard to play strong because my band room is so big compared to my bedroom. How do you develop a stronger Airstream? You and me both. I think that was a struggle of, somewhat coming back to normal of playing again. It's like I played a handful of gigs and things, and the difficulty of my gigs hasn't changed. My ability to do things on the trombone has changed a little bit. Looks we got a Kendall Keys Carter in the chat.
Kendall Keys!
Sorry to also hello to Troy. I'm not trying to jump over a bunch of comments, but
no, we're not jumping over comments here.
But actually, that story that I just told, I don't think Kendall. Maybe he was there for that. I can't remember if Kendall was in the big band at that time that I had to play all the trombones. Maybe he can say yay or nay to that. But yeah, developing a better or stronger Airstream, as you put it, or kind of more endurance, or just dealing with those sorts of things. I really think it's important just to play with people, which I know is a terrible answer to that question given this current situation of things.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee that you can solve that problem with that. That's really the best way to do it, and I feel like if I give another answer, unless Conner has something up his sleeve, I feel like there are other answers like using a practice mute or something, but I'm not sure that I can actually recommend that as the solution.
I wouldn't recommend that. I don't know. I can talk a little bit about my experience from that. I always found that it was the opposite for me. It was like, man, I loved how I sounded when I would go into the auditorium or the big band room in high school or even in college. And then when I had to go back to the practice room, that was the sad times.
But I don't think it's necessarily a sound comment. I think it's more of an endurance or struggling to play as well in a big room. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so I understand. So kind of filling up the room, being able to hear yourself, getting through when the sound's going so far, and you're just having to work harder to hit the back wall as opposed to what you'd have to do, I guess, at home. And I would say the power of repetition will probably serve itself at that point. And if we're talking about specifically in the context of where we are right now, everyone's reintroducing themselves to the band rooms of the world or the country roughly the same time. So I think if we all just kind of give ourselves a little bit of collective grace as we figure out our land legs again, get back into playing with ensemble, that would be fine. I'm not doing anything in large rooms right now, but I feel like at the time that we do, or I've been doing some brass quintets outside with a couple of band directors out here, and we are offering each other a lot of sight reading grace and lots of forgiveness of intonation and things. We're just, even us, we're trying to figure out how to play with people again. So yeah, it's definitely a weird thing, because I always like the old adage of iron sharpens iron. Thinking that playing with good people and playing with others, that's how you get better. But what happens when we all get worse because of a global situation? I don't want to get demonetized by saying the actual words. Just kidding. I'm not actually monetized, so it doesn't matter. But
was gonna say, where's my check?
Yeah, it's in the mail.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, we're working our way there. But yeah, so that's kind of that's an unfortunate question, or it's not an unfortunate question, but it's the answer I guess is unfortunate, or at least what we believe the answer to be, because it's really helpful to play with other people, and that's something that we can't all do, and we can't all do as frequently, and yeah, it's not an ideal time for that. But there are lots of other things that you can kind of get better at this time, with maybe being home a little bit more often. Especially for me, it's great because I'm in this room so often. It's like almost within the arm's reach. I can, grab my bass drum, grab my tenor drum, grab my euphonium. I can, noodle on an instrument for a little while, which I think is kind of helpful. I think we said hello to Troy. If not, hello, Troy. And then just another kind of, since I think there are probably some new people, but we are on Discord now. So I think there have definitely been a few people that have joined. We're up to like 7 or 8 people now in the Discord. Only 2 of which are me, so that's cool. But yes, so Jared's got another question. Would you recommend someone start improvising? As the jazz pedagogue, the officially accredited jazz pedagogue in the house, we'll let Conner at least start off with that one.
Oh boy, how would you recommend someone start improvising? Well, I mean, you'll never know how well you can swim until you jump in the deep water, as is always the first adage I throw people, is you just go ahead and get moving around. But if you're looking for, there's certain tools that people like to have, or certain prerequisite skill sets, that people look for, or certain exercises when they're starting. And the first that I would say is just being able to sing a melody and play it. If we're talking about the very basics of what improvisation is, it's just getting the sound in your head through the horn. And the easiest way to do that is kind of like put the barriers up. We're playing bowling with the rails on, and just like get tunes that you already know how to sing through the horn, and then do that in as many keys as you can with as beautiful time and as beautiful tone as you can. And that's going to give you the skills to pick a song or an idea that's going on in your head and being able to actualize it in real time. So before you even worry about, playing over crazy fast tunes with crazy chord changes, that skill is a lot easier to cultivate, that being able to hear an idea and bark it out of the horn. And you'll realize as you're learning all the other rules about like scales, chords, tunes, and transcriptions, is that all of those things are way, 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 way easier the stronger that first initial skill of hearing is. So I would say start with that. Even start with Mary Had a Little Lamb. Start with your Bordonis. Start with, stand tunes that you play, if you're in a pep band or something like that. That's where I did. And I think I transplanted some of those ideas into some high school jazz band solos myself. That might have happened. But hey, that's the start. And then you can move on to things like transcribing. I don't know what instrument we're talking about, but easy transcriptions for anybody would be something like Chet Baker, or any singers that you enjoy, or Paul Desmond, something like that. Or of course, we can always start with JJ. That's fine. But yeah, that's how I would get started.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is really, really good, and a lot of that I would agree. What I'd kind of, the analogy that I would use is that improvisation in any style, but most of what we talk about is kind of centered around the kind of the jazz idiom for improvisation, but this applies to other styles of improvisation as well. It's like learning a language. And ultimately, the best way to learn a language, if you want to learn Spanish, go study in Mexico. Go study in Spain. You want to learn French, go study in France for a couple of years. That's ultimately how we get better. And what that kind of translates to in kind of music terms is a lot of listening and a lot of playing with people who are better than you. That's something that I always tried to do, when, especially getting into college, but even before that, because in high school I was playing in a university big band, And I was a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid who was asking college people to play tunes with them, sometimes even grad students. And obviously they were way better than me. But most of them are really nice to me and would play tunes with me and show me, it's like, hey, you're playing this sound over this chord and it's cool, but there's also this sound, you might try this in addition. So, a lot of what I learned was playing with others, and that's one of the reasons probably why both of us ended up going to the University of North Texas, because there were so many good players. And Conner and I's early relationship really is Conner coming over to my house and us playing tunes and having salty snacks. That was literally a part of our relationship, was just like playing tunes and then like, are you hungry? Let's go to the grocery store. Let's get some chips. We get some kettle cooked Lay's chips. Those were the days before we looked at the back of those things. But
those are good times though.
But yeah, so that that's something that was a big part of our relationship specifically, and maybe we could say that this person was better at this point in time, but a lot of it was just Conner knew this stuff, I knew this stuff, I checked out these albums, I sounded more like this person, those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, that's kind of how it should always be. Is not you're not playing with someone else to see who can cut whom, who can like really play a solo on Cherokee better. But to me, it's a lot of what do you know that I could learn, and maybe what do I know that you could learn also. So I think that's pretty helpful. Let's go. Got a few more comments. Like a Pop says full send. Awesome. I don't really know how to respond to that. And
full send.
And Troy said, had to change my name from Mr. Anonymous. So now we know who we now know who Mr. Anonymous was this entire time.
We have a name for the name.
Right. Also has a question specifically for Conner, so I will not answer. When did you start playing jazz, Conner?
When did I start playing jazz? Well, I would say that there's a couple of answers to that question. I think that I started attempting to play in a jazz style in it must have been like the 8th grade, or maybe a little bit before that, when I heard the high school jazz band in my school. At the point was pretty strapped for trombone players, and the band director kind of figured out that I had a pretty good ear, and so threw me in 8th grade to the regular high school jazz band, very esteemed. So not the honors jazz band. I wasn't in the heavies, but he let me fill out the section as an 8th grader, and I got to go on a really fun trip with them. I can't remember where we went. It was fun. It was great times. So that's when I first started. I would equate that, if anyone's familiar with an analogy to Pokemon, it was like I had no moves. I was like a Magikarp. I was just splashing and flailing around, but I was having the time of my life. It was great fun. I didn't really listen to any jazz or anything like that. I just thought it was fun. And I think that, as far as being a kid and being 13 years old, that was great structure for me to have. I had to get to school early in the morning. I had things to do in the afternoon. I had places I had to go on buses. Probably kept me out of a lot of trouble. So that was awesome. And I highly recommend that to any human that has the opportunity to do so. But I started thinking more seriously about jazz probably halfway through my first year of college, when I already decided to go major in music. I had no real skill sets. I barely knew all my slide positions, and was just kind of hanging out in school. And Jamie Aebersold came to school. This is the first time I'd ever met him. I grew up and lived in the city that Jamie Aebersold lived in.
That's not true.
Never met him.
That's not true.
Okay.
He lived in New Albany.
Okay, same thing. He lived in the same metropolitan area. Never met him. I was living under a rock. And he comes up to my college. This is semester 2, year 1. I'm a freshman. And I'm the only person brave enough to go try to improvise with Jamie, because he always has somebody come up and be the guinea pig that doesn't know anything yet. And so he's just hey, sounds cool. There's chords and stuff that you could play too, right? And I'm like, what? I didn't know. And so he's listen, you seem nice. Go do the camp and figure things out. And so I did the camp, and that's one way to figure it out. Jamie Aebersold's got improv jazz workshop that you can take a pre-assessment, and then you get to go talk with pros, and the pros play every night. That wasn't the most beneficial thing, though. I think the place when I would say I really started playing jazz was from those experiences of going to that camp and talking with Jamie and asking question, I got the opportunity to play, or I invited myself essentially every Saturday night to go play at this place called Ramsey's Cafe on the World. If you ever go visit Louisville, go eat there. I don't think they have a jam session on Saturdays anymore. And it wasn't a jam session. It was someone's gig, but they were nice enough. The bass player knew me from something else and was just like, hey, come sit in and play tunes. And those guys were nice enough to let me figure it out and like make all my mistakes. Cause it's like, we would play until like 2 a.m. So who was really listening? But that was when I really started. I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and the saxophone player or the keyboard player would play the head, and maybe one of them would take a solo, and then they just look at me and be like, figure it out. And that was how I learned, I would say like 90% of the tunes that I know now, and probably the vast majority of the language that I play even to this day was from like those Saturdays.
And it can be so uncomfortable in those jam session sorts of situations. I remember in high school going to some, I can't remember the place. I wish I could remember it because you'd probably remember remember that venue. It was like some restaurant that was, I want to say on Main Street in Louisville, but I can't remember. But anyway, I remember going to those jam sessions, and especially if you can play a little bit, they kind of know to force you into some things, and so they'll be like, oh no, you'll hear this tune, and you might not hear this tune, but you'll remember. What you will do is you'll remember that you didn't hear that tune, and you will go home and learn it, because there's nothing more uncomfortable than playing a tune and like I remember the first time I played I'll Remember April at a jam session, and I maybe had heard it, but I was young and I definitely hadn't checked it out. And it's it's not a 32 bar form, and it's like it got me, and I didn't know where to stop, and it was Mott's or Maz, yeah, like short for mozzarella, right? Yes, Kendall is correct. Kendall came through with that answer there. Of course, I didn't know that he was still here. That's he's the actual Louisvillian. We no longer L1 or C4. Not that I ever actually did.
I don't even know what that means. That's just a confusing acronym.
I think it's Louisville 1, Cardinals forever, but now I'm on record as probably being wrong.
That does not have a good ring to it. But I would say the majority of the language that I play still these days is probably greatly informed from Kendall's playing in the Louisville scene. Just like smack. I bet you can probably say the same for yourself too.
Yeah, it's interesting playing because Kendall and I played like in a high school combo together, and I remember, and I'm going to out him on this stream right now to all 9 viewers, so Kendall can't escape this. I had to cover him on piano a few times because he's a little late. I remember, I think we played a gig for, I want to say it was the CEO of Humana.
Wow.
I think that was it was something like, it was some like big wig at Humana or something, and they had like a piano there, and I had to play, and like my piano skills, especially at that time, but even still, were not up to snuff. And I remember I'd played like Sugar, the Stanley Turrentine tune on piano, because we didn't have a bass player either at that time, because we couldn't really find anyone who was good and willing. But yeah, so anyway, but yeah, Kendall and I played together for a good bit in high school, kind of just towards the end, really. I can't remember if it was junior and senior year, maybe it might have just been senior year. Kendall might be able to correct me, but Kendall, it was for Barbara Sexton Smith. Okay, yeah, I mean long time ago. I don't know how I'm supposed to remember all of these things. I don't know how you remember all of these things. That's a pretty specific thing to remember, I feel like. But anyway, yes, Kendall was great. Kendall definitely, I remember like Kendall was a great pianist before starting to play jazz, but he kind of didn't really play jazz, and it's like showed him one thing, and then he just like the next day he knows more about jazz than everybody else. And it's just like kind of instantaneous, it felt like, from my vantage point. I'm sure Kendall has a different recollection, but that's how I remember things. Is Kendall didn't play a lot of jazz, and then was the best jazz player under 18 that I knew, just like in a 1 week period. But But yeah, so we got another. It's not technically a question, but we'll answer it anyway as if it was a question. Zach says, just finished picking out what video audition to use. It's so hard to choose sometimes, and that's definitely an interesting kind of topic to think about. You know, Zach did not teach Kendall all that he knows. That is not true. But anyway. So, you know, picking videos to use or picking audio to use for things is definitely really tricky. One of the things that I would always recommend is have someone else listen, because you're an okay judge of your playing, but you might get so caught up in, you know, oh, this one note doesn't have the best sound, I don't want to use it, and then you might use another recording that you're out of tune the entire time or something. So I find it's really helpful to ask other people. I don't know if you have some thoughts, Connor.
So we're talking about specifically like which takes to use of our video?
Just in a general sense.
Yeah. Man, if I get more than one take that I'm willing to send for other people to hear, and I gotta choose which one, like that's like, woo! That's the best. I would say, as far as the process of getting good takes, it's better to, that's a skill in and of itself that is similar to going in for a live audition, and I think that it should be practiced in the same way, because you can get a little bit of red light fever trying to get something very, very perfect. And I've done this before where I practice in a way that, like, if I'm shedding a movement of a concerto, while I'm practicing in the months leading up to the jury or the take or the audition, when I'm practicing, I'll stop when I play a wrong note and be like, all right, that's where I need to practice today. I need to figure that specific thing out. And then that's a skill that you're reinforcing, and you're going to do that the day of the recording. So if you've got takes already, man, just props. Like you did, like, that's awesome. That's something that I work on all the time, is trying to get myself to play through all the way without stopping, because I'm nitpicky in that way. And so what I do with that is, like, sometimes when I'm practicing at home, even if I'm not looking for something specific or trying to get a take of something, I'll just have the red light on with just like my phone, nothing fancy, but just to have that habit of, like, I am recording myself and I'm putting my best foot forward at all times. I don't know if it helps, but I have managed to get some good recordings sometimes. So I guess it helps a little bit.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely true. One of the things that kind of helped me along the way was maybe, you know, like 4 years ago when I kind of, or I guess more like 5 years ago now, when I kind of started doing Instagram a little bit more seriously. I was recording myself all the time to get that golden take that everyone is going to like my 15-second Instagram videos. Some of you might be too young to remember when Instagram only allowed 15-second videos. You know, back in my day. But anyway. You know, that was a big thing that I was always trying to get a really good take, and just practicing recording, like Connor said, it's a really helpful thing to just kind of practice the art of recording all the time. Let's see. What are you cats working on in the shed right now? That's a good question, Kendall. What are you working on, Connor?
Right now, I'm working on isolating articulation. So, like, doing things like eliminating multiple doodles and trying to improvise only with a single tongue. Or I do a lot of practicing with Drum Genius where I limit my rhythmic values to, like, only triplets, things like that. But as far as tunes and stuff, I'm shedding a Luke Brimhall solo right now on March of the Tadpoles, which is a contrafact on All the Things You Are, and it's frighteningly fast. But yeah, there's a live recording of the Army Blues from, like, maybe 2 years ago, where they do March of the Tadpoles, and the way you know you've watched the right video is that Ben Patterson of the Airmen of Note is subbing in on lead trombone. And if you go to that March of the Tadpoles take and go to 3 minutes and 20 seconds, you will hear the best bop on trombone that there is. Like, it's just like case in point. Like, if you looked up Encyclopedia Britannica, the definition of slammin', they would say to go watch that video specifically at that point. So there you have it. Zach, what are you shedding right now?
What am I shedding right now? That's a good question. Shedding job applications for college teaching positions. No. And I'm actually shedding I have to take my comprehensive exams next week. So a little bit of that. So maybe I'm not in the woodshed quite the way that I'd like to. But I've been trying to learn more tunes. In the cover band that I play in, we often do some jazz stuff, and we've kind of made a little bit of a pact because we can kind of call whatever tunes we want, and we made a little bit of a pact to kind of call some more tunes. So I've been shedding a little bit of some tunes that I haven't been I just kind of missed. Like Up Jump Spring was one that I must have played it at some point somewhere. Ooh. But no one's called Up Jump Spring on me in the last 5 years. I maybe at one point even knew it, but I was just like that. It's like that. Ben Kenobi. It's like Obi-Wan. That's the name that I haven't heard in a long time. It's just like, oh, that's a weird one. I mean it's not a weird one. But that's a tune that I didn't know. And I can't remember what the other one was it's a Joe Beam tune, and it's on the Aebersold.
Once I Loved. We were talking about this the other day.
I don't think that's it though.
Was that the one you were working on? I thought it was.
I can't remember, but just some tunes that slip through the cracks, and because there are times where you feel like every tune, but you just know all the tunes that the people around you like to play. And it's like, because there have been so many tunes that you and I would always default back to, and then it's just and I didn't know the tunes that you knew when we first started playing tunes together, and you didn't know the tunes that I knew, and then now we both know all of those tunes, but there are still other tunes out there.
There's a lot.
But yeah, but see, we got a lot of comments as you get through some of these. Just a little background info. Had to record March from Hulse 2 and the Dragon solo and the opening of Suite in E-flat. All great things. I really like the Dragon solo.
It's the Dargason, the Fantasia on the Dargason. All right.
I should learn how to read. To be fair, I'm a little bit far away from the screen. That's not even the right amount of characters. So yeah, I'm incompetent. We'll edit that out in post. Which you actually can do, but I probably won't do that. So if anyone's watching this in the future, you got to experience the mistake just like everybody live. But let's see. Record every day for a week and a half prior. Yeah, that definitely helps. Let's see. Michael Rodriguez. How big is too big for bass trombone mouthpieces? I'm looking at a Greg Taylor mouthpiece, but I can't decide on the size. The 1.5 is a little smaller than the Denniswick 00 AL. The 1.25 is close to a Schilke 60. The Dave Taylor 1 is about the size of the Doug Yeo size, which I think the Doug Yeo is a Schilke 59 size, if I'm correct. But maybe that's wrong. I think that's right. Mainly playing jazz as well as symphony orchestra. I also come from tuba, so a bigger bass from a mouthpiece is better. Are you asking or telling me that it's better? Or closer, you're asking. Let's see. We got Abdullah in the chat. Anyway,
shout out to his family.
Also with the Dragon solo, maybe I just wanted to talk about the Dragon solo. I love the Dragon solo. It's one of the best things that Wagner wrote. And the tuba gets featured. So, but anyway, as far as large mouthpieces, I have a 00, I have a 0, and I have a 1 from Denniswick. Those are my 3 bass trombone mouthpieces. The 00, I would not use pretty much ever. I got that to mess around with on contrabass trombone, which I think it might actually be a little bit small for contrabass trombone. But the 00 size, I mean, again, every mouthpiece sizes are personal, but a 00 in my head, I definitely have to say downvote. I don't know that I can recommend that for most things. I think it does matter what you're doing, but both jazz and symphony orchestra, you're only on bass trombone some of the time. Especially you're playing Schumann or you're playing Brahms, you're not bass trombone. You're at best a large bore tenor. You might be playing bass trombone, but the reality of it is at that time there was nothing even close to as big as the bass trombone that we play today. That just wasn't really what was. As far as bell size and bore size, there wasn't anything that was used that was that big. So, you're playing a lot of times, you're playing a tenor trombone part, really. How many things in orchestra really do you need a second valve for? I'm not saying you shouldn't have a second valve, but I think it's worth kind of pointing out, and even somewhat to the same extent big band stuff, because in big band there's a lot of unison solis, and some of those you can play down the octave. Sometimes that's what people want, sometimes it's not what people want. But there's the side of, sometimes you have to play that unison high C. Do you really want to play the biggest mouthpiece you can? I don't know. I play almost all of my playing on a Denniswick Heritage 0. I got the 1 and I switched to it for a while, and then I came crawling back to the 0. And I know a lot of people that think the 0 is too big, and so maybe that's, maybe it is too big, but it has worked well for me. Again, most of what I do with bass trombone is solo stuff and playing in a big band, and it works out pretty well, generally speaking. Yeah, Zach, you can be that guy. I can't read. Nobody's perfect. But yeah, Wagner with the Dragon Solo. I think I just want to talk about the Dragon Solo. Do
you really want to talk? You really want to go there right now?
No, it's fine. I don't need to talk about the Dragon Solo. It's nice. You're playing with the Wagner Tubin. It's a whole lot of fun. They're never gonna play in tune, so whatever you do is automatically right because they're wrong. We always, no, Wagner Tubins weren't meant to be played, or I double pluralized it. Wagner Tubin were not meant to be in tune because it's always played by French.
What?
They're always played by French horn players, and that most of them don't want to do it. So
no, well, the plural form of tuba. What did you say?
Tubin, but then I added an S.
Tubin?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well, that's like the German, like Wagner Tubin.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
This is why I got a C- in German class. This is exactly it.
I wouldn't say that, like, I wouldn't be, stand in front of a band and say Tubin, like that would be weird. It'd be
modern day
correct.
Tubin.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so you're playing the Dragon Soul. You play with the Wagner tubas, and it's essentially the scene in the opera where a dragon is like coming out of its lair, and it starts on a low E flat, like the lowest E flat on the piano, and it just kind of like does this meandering thing, and it kind of slowly creeps out, and then you do this like really just kind of bombastic like. In the staff playing, and all I want to do is just play the Dragon Solo on like the world's largest B flat tuba, and that's just all I want out of life, nothing else. But if you feel so left out, you've never heard of the Dragon Solo, that's okay. To be honest, I think I heard about the Dragon Solo pretty late. I don't think I knew about the Dragon Solo until like halfway through my undergrad, towards the end of my undergrad. Like I definitely didn't know about it in high school, and I didn't know it like early college. It was just one of those. I don't think I really knew it until it was on some audition that I didn't take, but I was aware of and was looking at the list, and I was like, "What's that?" Yeah, Connor only knows it because I tell him these things. But the Dragon Soul, it's from Rheingold, Das Rheingold, and it's definitely it's a nice one. It's very low, but it's a fun one to play. Let's see. Does Abdullah have an actual? Or wait, before we go there. There's an interesting YouTube video of Carnegie Hall Masterclass. Yeah, there's an interesting video, and then you get to see all the Wagner Tubin.
There you have it.
I don't really know what Abdullah's talking about, so I'm just going to disregard it.
I don't know what MC means in the context of that.
Yeah, I don't know.
If anyone can inform us in the chat, maybe Abdullah wants to speak his case here.
Are we talking about?
I understand.
Like an MC, like a MC on the mic. Like what are we?
No, DPS is damage per second, so I'm assuming he's talking about like World of Warcraft or something like that.
But
what can you do?
See. Look
Kendall wants to know how we got into teaching.
Oh, did I miss that?
Yeah. He asked that earlier.
Sorry.
Well, we were talking about the tubin. Hey, before we do that.
Yeah.
Elvis.
Hello, Elvis.
Elvis.
Maybe we don't shout and peek the microphone, but
sorry. I apologize for
maybe
nothing.
we compress ourselves before it hits the compressor.
All right, fine. Use my inside voice.
Right. But anyway, I did it again. M. Jeffrey says masterclass.
Nameless Jeffrey.
It could be Margaret Jeffrey. It could be Michael Jeffrey. It could be Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Could be the GOAT. You know, we don't know. But let's see. How did you cats get into teaching? Anything you notice with all of your students? It's a good question, especially coming from a pianist. That's interesting to kind of. I assume you don't want to talk about their tone quality. That's probably not what you're looking for. But I got into teaching. I'd kind of dabbled with a little bit of it, but moving to Texas for my undergrad, there's just so much teaching going on, and I managed to trick someone into letting me teach their students when I was an undergrad, and learned kind of on the job. McTwister Jeffrey, there we go. But anyway, that was kind of how I got into it, and I think some of what I noticed with my students is somewhat regional too. You can see how they're taught certain things in certain areas they're taught better, certain things they're taught worse. But I always harp on rhythm. I think that I'm the really kind of persnickety rhythm person in a lot of my students' lives. I had a lesson with one of my students today, and in his lesson, I guess it was really his lesson last week, that we talked about rhythm so much, and he was like, I know you sound like a broken record, but I know you're right. And it's just like, yeah, rhythm is important, at least to me it is. So that's kind of a thing that I often kind of focus on. But yeah, what do you have as far as that goes, Conner?
As far as why I got into teaching, or was it why or was it how?
How, and anything you notice with all of your students.
Okay, well, I guess I got into teaching. I was at a point in my life where I didn't have any direction, and I chose teaching randomly. Ended up falling in love with it as I learned more about the behavioral science side of things, and also going with like my own personal experience of kind of learning through a lot of different learning systems, a lot of different types of schools, and having like band directors and teachers that really supported me. I knew that I owed so much of my experience thus far in my life to those people. Seemed like a logical way to give it back. Each one teach one sort of thing. And then as far as anything that I notice with all of my students, nothing musical, extra musical stuff. Every student has the capacity to learn. I've taught a really, really diverse body of students in my very, very short time as a cert and as a private teacher, and even as a private school teacher briefly. And I would say that the most important thing about if you want to elicit a musical experience out of a kid or provide a musical experience for the kid, you've got to think about Maslow's hierarchy before you do that. You got to meet the student as a human, their needs being met. You can talk about things as basic as shelter and clothes, food, sleep. You can, get into the weeds of that. But as far as meeting them in that room and creating that environment where they can feel safe to talk to you as they are, if you can't do that, then music's not going to happen. So that's all I got for that.
Yeah, it's definitely some good points. I'm trying to see. It looks like we lost Conner. I don't know what happened, but Conner is no longer with us. Now he's back. Hold on. Let me get him back. Sorry, you're going to see my head tilt to the side because reasons. We'll just leave it at that. Because I've got a TV that's set up in portrait mode, but Conner needs to be in not portrait mode. So we're back. We didn't lose him for long.
Cool. Sorry about that.
No worries. Was that just an internet dropout, or what was that? Did you click something?
No, I didn't click. It just went poof, and then you were gone.
Gotcha. Well, anyway, interesting question from Zach. What is the best two-part Wagner wrote? There are so many good ones. Das Rheingold, Meistersing, Lohengrin, Tannhauser, Ride. So let's see. I think this is a question that's best suited for Conner, right?
For best tuba part? I can tell you the one that I like the best to listen to.
Let's hear it.
I like... I got the chance to do this one time. I didn't play very well, but I got to play the bass trombone part that's in unison with the tuba, like the last time that the Prelude to Act 3 of Lohengrin theme comes through. that was the absolute sauce.
That D7 arpeggio.
The ba-ba-ba-da. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a fun one. I've never played that actually in IRL.
It's very fun.
But yeah, so I think my answer is complicated for this because I think it depends on how far we zoom in, because some of these operas as a whole, I mean, they're all good, don't get me wrong, but the tuba parts aren't necessarily as great if we're doing the whole opera. Ride's got a lot of interesting stuff other than the main thing, the main excerpt that we all play. I think Rheingold to me is probably the one that has the most interesting like music overall to play, from start to finish. But also you kind of just have to answer Meistersinger because even though our main thing is right at the beginning, it's great. So I love playing Meistersinger. If I my Desert Island tuba excerpt is probably J to L and Meistersinger. That's all I really need if I had to only play one excerpt for the rest of my life. But I hope that I don't have to do that.
Hopefully not.
I also just realized, Connor, you probably can't see me anymore. Is that true?
I mean, I can't see you in Discord, but I'm kind of watching the version of you from 20 seconds in the past, and that's enough for me.
We're back, but now I've ruined it.
Hey, there you are.
I'm sure this is really fascinating to see all the inner workings of this. But now it should be back. Connor can see me. I just saw that the webcam didn't have a light on it, or it did have a light, but
That's okay.
It was red.
We spent enough time talking on the phone in normal life that it didn't feel foreign at all.
There you go. To be fair, I don't think we've spoken since the last stream, but
that's true.
At least not on the phone.
There you go.
We've texted. But
it's been a busy week, busy news week.
But Elvis has a question. How did y'all become Dennis Wick artists? In what state? I mean, is it Dennis Wick Tubin or Tubas? No.
Get out of here.
How did we become Dennis Wick artists, and what steps did you take? So, I mean, it's kind of a hard question to answer because it's almost an Abdullah, yes, you can join the Discord. I thought you did already, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, so I think it's almost a better question for the company itself, or like the people who decided that we should be artists, because what we may have thought that we did that to achieve that feat maybe not the reason why they wanted us on the artist roster. You never know. For me, I mean, I've been a Dennis Wick artist since 2017, I want to say. It's like summer of 2017. And, for a long time, I've been a Dennis Wick fan for a long time. I mean, I can show my first Dennis Wick mouthpiece. This mouthpiece was the first Dennis Wick mouthpiece that I bought, and I got this in maybe 2009. It's my first trombone mouthpiece. Was this mouthpiece right here? It was a gold heavy top 6BL. It's not a
thick fella.
It's not it's a thick fella. It's still 6, but
thick fella. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not necessarily. I don't use it for much anymore. I don't really like playing a 6 on a large bore anymore. But it's interesting that I had that. So, not that they asked me what in 2017 they weren't just asking me like in 2008 what trombone mouthpiece were you playing, was it Dennis Wick or We Can't Talk to You, it wasn't like that, but I've had a long history of playing Dennis Wick mouthpieces. It's pretty much the only F-tuba mouthpiece I've ever played. I actually don't think I've owned I don't think I've purchased another bass trombone mouthpiece. I think I have one that it doesn't matter, but the story, I loaned someone my Dennis Wick mouthpiece, and I was like, I don't have a bass trombone mouthpiece now. Can I borrow one of yours? And then it was like a not so good stock mouthpiece, so I ended up with that. But anyway, it's pretty much all that I've played, especially on trombone. I mean, I've dabbled with other things, but I've spent a lot of time playing Dennis Wick stuff, and there are mutes too. For like trombone cut mute, that's my favorite cut mute. I still use the Humsenberg because you have to play what other people play, but I've always liked the Dennis Wick cut mute more. I probably, before being a Dennis Wick artist, I probably spent more than $1,000 on Denniswick things over a decade or so, to be fair. But I definitely was doing it. But
I can talk a little bit about that as well.
yeah, we're having a slight technical problem potentially, so I'll deal with that. But you keep talking.
Okay, I can talk a little bit about my experience as well. So I did not have like a long track record of purchasing their mouthpieces over 10 years like Zach did. And I don't think that there's like a clipboard with like things like that they check. I have no idea what the vetting process like would be. But I would say probably the most valuable thing that I did when I was getting in touch with Dinosaur as a company, and the reason that I wanted to be plugged in with them was just because I had already developed a relationship with some of the people that were distributing mouthpieces in Chicago. And I was just there talking with them. Maybe I didn't buy a mouthpiece every single time. Of course, I didn't buy a mouthpiece every time I went in there, because I was in there like, once every couple of weeks, just like trying stuff out and talking and getting to know the people that were working in the building. And then I realized like, they do a lot of important stuff as far as like setting up places for professionals to talk and giving people agency and discussing their creative process and kind of moving the art form forward through discussion and connecting artists through festivals and things like that. So I figured like this is something significant to be plugged into and something that I would like to offer, my 2 cents and help out with. So that was kind of the reason why I jumped in to be included with them. But yeah, I mean, other than mouthpieces being slamming.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like ultimately that's what it is. It's like we were fans of this thing for a long time, and then, and especially Connor and I like always are talking about mouthpieces. Literally today, he posted a video, and I just texted him what mouthpiece was that, because I was pretty sure it was the 10 CS, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah, what were you trying to say with that?
I wasn't trying to say anything. I was just curious because I think in my head I thought that you had a Heritage 10 CS, but maybe do you have any Heritage? Am I crazy?
I have a Heritage 5. I cannot tell you the letters. Okay. I think it might even be ABL.
They get complicated down there.
Yeah, that one's a really, really fun one. It sounded outstanding on the Xeno, which I am selling right now for the 10 people watching. That's a sick horn, but we won't get into that right now. But yeah, but then when I switched to the 42, I felt that it filled it up a little better with the 4.
Yeah, I think but the Dennis Wick thing, I think just to go back to that, I think a lot of it for both of us was that they had a shop in Chicago where they had all the mouthpieces, and if for me that's like I'm a kid in a candy store. It's just like you're saying that you have all of them and I can try them. So I was there a lot, because there's nothing more fun than trying mouthpieces, and like especially like they're so nice there. They're just like it's like, you want any coffee or anything? And it's like, no, I just want to try the mouthpieces. And that's kind of all I'm here for. Especially for me, especially in Chicago, I didn't always drive. Sometimes I take the train or something. So it's like, I'd bring just my bass trombone. It's just like, what do you got? And then, some of the people that worked there that are, very nice, they would say, like Ryan would be like, try this. A lot of people like this mouthpieces, this mouthpiece on this horn, or this, on bass trombone, people really like this one. It's like I try it and it's like, oh, I like it, but I don't like this. And then he's like, oh, well, then maybe you'll like this one. It's like, oh yeah, this is it. So it's like I went in there and I bought mouthpieces because I wanted those mouthpieces. And so that's a big part of it. I mean, it's one of those things where up in those sorts of details sometimes, and it's a nice thing for sure. And I'm very happy, and I assume you are, Connor, too, being on their artist roster. Going crazy about endorsements is maybe not always the best solution either, or thinking that it's the end all be all. It's definitely nice having a company in your corner, especially with Dennis Wick. It's like one year I went to Midwest, and it's just they were like, oh, is anybody going to Midwest? We've got extra passes, and I was able to get one. And little things like that are really, really nice. But man, it says the stream is broken again. So someone tell me if the stream actually isn't working, because according to 2 people that have answered, it was fine the last time. But it says, on my end, it says the stream status is poor. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. And then it went to excellent, and then it's back to this. So,
Mine looks like it's working.
Cool. So I don't know. My internet seems to be fine. I can load pages and things, but alas. But imagine playing Heritage. Yeah, there actually are like a surprising amount of people that I feel actually feel that way. I'm sure, Abdullah, you're mostly making a joke, but yeah, I've definitely heard that from some people, people that I respect and things. I don't know what's so wrong with them. I like playing some of them.
I love Heritage.
I would say I play more classic series, like just looking at my horns. Euphonium is classic. Both tubas are classic. Bass trombone's Heritage. Large tenor is classic. And then for jazz trombone stuff, it's either classic or Heritage, depending on the need. But I don't know. I definitely like the class. If I had to just choose one, I'd say classic. But I like having both options because they just sound a little different, and it's nice to have. The heavy top ones, like this one, this is my only one, and it's not, tell me you see this as soon as you see it. All right, Abdullah. But there should be a delay. There being a delay is different than it being broken, but I don't know. But yes, it's mostly coming okay. Brian Fincher says, well.
Well, Mr. Fincher is in the chat.
Cool.
We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival.
The stream now says that it's back to being excellent, so I don't know what that's about. I don't know if my internet is being weird. I'm definitely like all wired up and everything, and it should be fine. I kind of like the flat rim. Is the rim actually different, or is it just the rim after the, it's like the thickness of that outer part? But maybe I'm wrong.
Wait, what was the question?
Abdullah says he kind of likes the flat rim, and I don't know if he's saying that he likes the rim of the Heritage or the Classic Series more, because I thought they were the same rim, but maybe I'm crazy.
It feels different to have the lack. I think like just like the lack of density behind the rim. You can really feel like the surface area.
Gotcha. I'll grab
as they say, rim with no Yankee.
Yeah, there you go.
Aha.
That's definitely a throwback. Yankee with no rim. So these
Heritage with no Yankee.
These aren't the same. This is a 5 and a 6, but yeah, maybe they are different. I don't know. I feel like I think that they're mostly the same. I know like the inner stuff, it's all the same. It's just, and they actually weigh about the same as what I've been told. But they the placement of the mass is different. But yeah, so here are the 3 main blanks from Dennis Wick. And they've got some other artist ones and things, which I've been looking to try out. I think I might actually try out some of the Aaron Tyndall tuba mouthpieces. I messaged him on Facebook a couple of days ago and asked him what he'd recommend, and I think I'm going to try to see some of those. M. Jeffrey says excellent is a stretch. Is it like super pixelated, or what is good for? I don't know if you're being funny or if you're actually giving me feedback or giving us feedback. Troy Maccabee says, I've been saving up for a mouthpiece, but I didn't know which to buy or where to even try mouthpiece. All I know is I want to get away from my Helleberg. Yeah, I mean, the mouthpiece rabbit hole it's a hole to get into for sure. It's hard to know what to try, and people always ask me what I recommend over the internet, and I often do tell people what I quote unquote recommend. But mouthpieces, one, they're personal, and it's like if I've never heard you play and don't know what you're playing on now. I mean, I guess you're playing on a Helleberg, but still, it's like if I don't know you're playing, anything that I say is really just a general thing. It can't really be the end-all, be-all, and especially we all have different lips, we all have different teeth, we all play different instruments. Sometimes I'll have this mouthpiece, like this is my favorite mouthpiece, I'm going to play it on every small bore, and then I try it on some, it's like, oh, this doesn't work on here. It's like this just didn't add up for me. So I think that's something to kind of think about too. But as far as I'm concerned, my blanket recommendation for most people is a 2XL for for a C or B flat tuba. That's generally what I recommend. I play a 1XL, but for most people I recommend a 2XL. But again, I play a 1XL, so maybe a 1XL is better for everybody because it's better for me. And I think anyone who tells you that the mouthpiece they play is the absolute best mouthpiece and it's the one for everybody, to me that's just never true. Or not never true, but rarely true. Oh, excellent! I see. I see what the joke was.
He was goofing on you.
The content is not good, is what it's good, but it's not excellent, is what you're saying. You are funny, M. Jeffrey. I think I'm just going to read that as Mr. Jeffrey, or should I just read it as Dragon Solo?
Dragon Jeffrey.
Yeah. Hot Pocket or Calzone. I don't know that I have had either in a really long time.
Don't lie to us.
I mean, I don't think that I've had.
No, I know you haven't. Do you have a hot take? Do you have one?
I guess actually, hold on. I wouldn't say that we had calzones specifically, but during the power, we had power for a little while, and we started making a homemade pizza, and then the power went out, and even though we have a gas oven and gas range, the oven wouldn't work because it needs to have power to regulate temperature. And so we had to go to using the stove, so what we did was we put another layer of crust, or like dough, and then made a little thing. So I would say that I did have a calzone recently, a few weeks ago, and it was good. So that's about, that's about all I have to say about that. Do you have an answer, Connor?
I'm going to go hard lean towards calzone as well for a lot of reasons. First reason, initially, if you get a calzone next to a Hot Pocket, it's going to be bigger. Like what I'm thinking is like restaurant purchased calzone. That's going to always be physically larger than a Hot Pocket. So that's going to be way better. Then you got to think about, and I thought that maybe this would lean towards Hot Pocket, but like equity of distribution. It's like, well, you could probably get a lot more Hot Pocket, like pure just pound for pound, for like the restaurant price of a calzone. That might be a little higher. But then I was thinking, you could just make a calzone at home. And the ingredients, you would just make it larger. And that would be sufficiently better than a store-bought Hot Pocket. So as far as equity of distribution, size, and overall taste, calzone both ways.
There you go.
So there you have it.
So Abdullah says Helleberg Master Race. Is that what you played on that Neptune, Abdullah? You always have to remember that Abdullah spent some time on a big old tuba. But he had the same, or he was using, I don't think it was his, but maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Abdullah, that he had the same C tuba that I had, or I have. Tuba Man 365 says Nafam Dennis Wickmaster Race. And he also says, used to play 2.5 cc, now play an AT2U for C and a 3SL for F. Yeah, those are all good mouthpieces. I talked to Aaron Tyndall a little bit, and he recommended the AT1 or the AT3 for my Neptune. So I think I'm going to try, I think that's what he said. I have to double check. I think I'm going to try both of those. But the 3SL, I've been really wanting to try the 2SL more than the 3SL, but I know a lot of people who swear by the 3SL. But the stream broke for Troy. Hopefully it's back. It says again that it's excellent.
Yeah, peace and love for the streams.
But it's definitely been going in and out every once in a while with the same error message that I've never had before. While I think my internet is fine, but I'm not really sure. But also Abdullah said box 6 3/4 trauma check. So not exactly the route that I was trying to go with that, but there is something to be said for like this is a good mouthpiece and most people will like it. But assuming that one mouthpiece will work for every person on every instrument and every musical situation is, to me, not generally how it goes. Especially with two mouthpieces. I know so many people sound great on Parentucci mouthpieces. And maybe I haven't tried the right one, but they never really worked for me. Like M. Jeffrey is a person that sounds good on Parentucci mouthpieces. I don't. Or at least I don't like it. Maybe I sound okay, but M. Jeffrey says there's a company called Calzone that makes tuba flight cases. Is that real? I feel like that's a joke, but Maybe it's not. Grits, sugar, or salt? I'm going to have to go with salt. I don't really understand.
Hard salt.
I don't really understand the sugar thing, but yeah, I don't get it. Abdullah says it wasn't his Neptune. Played a Lasky 30G, so not much better. Laskys are great. I like the 30G and the. I don't know all of those Laskys, and I actually never owned a tuba Lasky, but they're definitely good mouthpieces. I've got one Lasky for trombone, and that's a 57 MD, 57 medical doctor. Connor, is this maybe a good time to pivot to our Instagram questions that we have sourced?
We have a couple of sourced questions from the internet from this afternoon, so yeah, we can go ahead and take a look at some of them. Go ahead and ask away. Do you have yours pulled up? I can go ahead and grab mine.
I don't have mine, but I'm close. I'm in app. Let's see.
I got to figure out how to look at them. Oh, I got a couple more now. From Mystery Jeffrey.
Mystery Jeffrey. So, do you want to? How many do you have that are real?
Let's see.
That are worth putting on here.
Let's see. We'll honor all of Mr. Jeffrey's questions, and so net total I've got 4.
4. Okay, why don't you go first? Because I've got 2.
Okay. Let me see this. No, not Facebook Messenger.
And read the username too, assuming it's okay to read.
Mr. Jeffrey. Mystery Jeffrey asks, please ask Zach what his favorite Jodie Foster movie is.
That's a good question, but also pretty. I was gonna say it's easy, but then I thought of another one. Yeah, that's tough. That's pretty tough. I mean, M. Jeffrey knows the hard-hitting questions. If I just had to pick one, the gut one was Flight Plan. So if anybody's seen Flight Plan,
what?
I'm a fan of Flight Plan. Have you seen?
That's your goat.
Have you seen Flight Plan?
I've seen parts of Flight Plan, but I don't think it matters because her magnum opus, her best role.
I mean, that's also a good one. The other one
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, but that's like
it's compelling.
Yeah, I know. But then I guess the other one that I really like is Panic Room. Have you seen Panic Room?
I have seen Panic Room. She's very great in Panic Room.
Panic Room with Kristen Stewart and Forrest Whitaker, and there's someone else in that. I mean, there are other actors in that, but there's someone else that I think people would recognize. But yeah, I love my Jodie Foster movies. What can I say? So let's see here. How do I? Let's see. For some reason, I have the question up, but there we go. So Pink Crush 512 says, how do you balance endurance training versus flexibility training? So I think that the endurance training for me, the real world has mostly helped me out with that, of just playing a lot. Especially when I was in school, it was like playing all of the time, playing in every ensemble, probably to my own detriment sometimes. But for my endurance, it definitely helped that out. So I don't necessarily work on endurance that much, because I kind of let that work itself out in the real world. If I'm not playing a lot, I will. So I've had to do that through this global situation. But for the most part, it's been it's kind of been what it's been. But yeah, as far as flexibility, that's definitely something that I try to get after every day. But we're talking about balance between the two, more heavily weighted on flexibility than on endurance. Do you want to answer that question too, Connor?
I can speak a little bit about it. I've heard Pink Crush play before. I know all about this user's flexibility and endurance, so I don't know if I can offer really real help to them, but I can just say globally, I guess, yeah, similar thing where I'm kind of thinking about endurance more when I'm playing in real time with real people, kind of focusing on economy of playing. It's just not practical to really be working on that right now when I'm not.
Oh, I didn't realize who that was. I didn't recognize the username, but I know who that is.
That's a exceptionally musical musician, yes. But yeah, what was I going to say to that? Yeah, probably I focus more on flexibility as far as like factors of my overall musicality that I'm consciously like, okay, I'm going to focus on this right now. even though I try not to focus on any one thing all by itself, I try to at least like quasi multitask, find things that work on time and intonation, flexibility and range or something, whatever, just trying to at least combine two, make a composite. But yeah, I would say that economy of playing is kind of how I think about endurance. I'm just like trying to, space out as much good brass playing as I can over a long stretch of time is one of those like back burner soft skills that I like to say, ideally, I'm always thinking about in the back of my mind. Probably not, definitely not, but it's one of those ones that I definitely like. It's a much more of a macro goal. It's just difficult to be like, okay, what exercise do you do to work on endurance? It's like, I play a lot.
Yeah, I think that's, I try to have a horn on my face for like a lot of the day, just like try to constantly be playing. And I think that kind of helps. But yeah, I don't know that I'm like, this is my exercise for endurance ever. I'm sure that there are some that you could do. I mean, but I think at the end of the day, it's just playing is kind of the simple answer. And that's more fun to me than, I might like while I'm improvising, play more in the high range to, make sure I can do that for longer or something like that. I might take some sort of approach that way. But as far as, thinking about playing this long tone to work on my endurance, it's not necessarily the way that my brain is wired. You're up. Next question.
Oh yeah, so there you have it. Let's see. Here's a really good one from Agrobone. Shout out to Agrobone. What do you do to work on playing legato while not being Smeary? Wow, that's really hard to do. Yeah. I wish I could tell you. One thing that I'm doing right now, I don't know if this is like right. It's just kind of like a season.
There are no rights and wrongs.
There aren't. There's not. And I'm definitely a person that gets into like I wouldn't say fads of musicality, but I kind of hop from these kind of waves of inspiration. I think that has a lot to do with my ADHD, which I work with and have therapy for and work on for other reasons too. And it's totally fine. It doesn't affect my quality of life, but I try to ride those waves and kind of allow myself to explore those musical areas. And right now, one of the things I'm kind of abandoning is doodle tonguing. I love doodle tonguing. I love people that do it well. And I'm realizing now, going back to recordings of myself playing in like a traditional, very like 70s, 80s doodle style, I don't know if I'm satisfied with it. And so now I'm going back and trying to rehash a lot of vocabulary and forcing myself to only single tongue. So going back to that March of the Tadpoles solo that I'm transcribing right now, what I'm doing with that, I'm aware in the recording when it's up to speed, it's not every note is single tongued top, but I'm making myself do it. And that is giving me, it's not necessarily that the tongue is making myself clearer, because it's not really doing anything. It's the air and the slide technique that's behind the single tongue articulation. But forcing myself into that little kind of non-musical box, when I go back to play it more extemporaneously, it's much more precise and it's much more musical. So I would say like setting sort of, limitations like that on yourself is one way that I work on that.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that I work on it with a lot of my students, not saying, Agrobone knows how to play the trombone. That's not what I'm necessarily meaning by that. But, one of the ways that I kind of go about it, I guess in my own practice too, is I separate the slide movement and the articulation sometimes. So one of the things that I like to do is monotone practice. So, maybe less on the jazz side with things, but, let's take an excerpt, playing something like Hungarian March. I would play that all on an F or something like that, just dum bum 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 da 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 dum dum da da da, and try to play it really musical and with a really clear tongue. That's probably a poor example because it's not legato. Pretend I said an excerpt that is legato. But anyway, it's still helpful for all those things. But something where we're wanting to work on that on, especially as we're talking about trombone here. So really getting the legato tongue or any type of tonguing together on a single pitch, and then getting the slide together. So what I like to do is like playing like a Bordoni, I guess is probably a better example. I'll take a Bordoni and play it without tonguing whatsoever. don't need to demonstrate it, but I'll play with no tongue whatsoever, and then I'll monotone it and go back and forth and kind of make my mind focus on one thing at a time, and then I'll combine them, and usually it's a little bit better. So that kind of helps me out. Let's go on to the next question. This is from Alyssa K. LOL, and Alyssa says, "What's your favorite thing about being a low brass player?"
Oh, that's a good question.
My favorite thing about being a low brass player, there's so many good things. That's hard, but I can't lie. I do like playing loud from time to time. Sue me. Actually, please don't. But
Don't do that.
Please don't sue me. We'll edit this out. We'll call the editor and tell him to edit this out. But yeah. But yeah, so I do like playing loud. I think that's pretty fun. I think just like the dynamic control of the instrument overall, and especially like sitting in an ensemble and kind of being able to have your foot on the gas in some ways of this is how loud the orchestra is going to play. This is how like the saxophones may have one thing that they want to do, but we can kind of push them in another direction sometimes. But it's there's so many fun things. What about you, Conner?
Oh, that wasn't going to be what my answer was. My answer was all my friends.
There you go.
I like all my friends that I've made playing trombone and euphonium and stuff. It's impactful relationships. The music's cool, but at the end of the day, you're sitting next to humans and connecting with them. And I could have sat anywhere in the band, and that would have led me in any number of directions in my life. But I'm very satisfied with who I've interacted with and how things have gone so far and the people that I've met. But as far as just musical stuff, I would say pedal tones and long tones, because I think that we as low brass musicians have the most physically satisfying long tones of any instrument. And the day that I realized this was I was talking with a great musician and band director in Texas, Mark DeHertog, and he was talking about shedding trombone because he's a killing instrumentalist of all disciplines. But when he was in school, he played reeds, mostly tenor saxophone, I think. But he plays a lot of trombone for his students, and he plays very, very well. And he said the thing that got him, it was so easy for him to practice the trombone and get good at it, was because it was so fun to play the long tones. Because like when you're holding a euphonium or a tuba or a trombone, like you feel it like vibrate your whole body. So it just feels huge. It's a very physically satisfying, relaxing thing to do. So yeah, think about that next time you're doing long tones. It's like, whoa, everything's shaking. And then another really cool thing to do is like, I'm not good at it, but I'm not thinking about this in like the Mengelsdorf persuasion, but like multiphonics, that adds like an extra rattle inside of your brain while they're all trying to do that. And there's one that I really enjoy doing. If I had to pick like my favorite note to play on the trombone, it's tuning B flat, or I shouldn't say tuning B flat, like second line from the bottom, bass clef staff, while you're singing a G natural. And if you can get the temper tuning just right, I can hear, or maybe I'm feeling, a sympathetic E flat below the bass clef staff pop out. And it's really cool when that all lines up. So that would probably be my favorite thing to do on the trombone.
Awesome. So you should have 2 more questions. Is that correct?
I thought I did. Not really. One of them is from Creme de la Cremes. Where's that money you owe me for those lessons? I don't owe you anything. Creme, if that is your real name. But no, that was a band director of mine from my senior year of high school who gave me some trombone lessons to get me ready to go to college. But yeah, really, really pulled me a solid. Pretty sure I paid for those, but I was like 17, so who actually knows?
Right.
The other question is from Mystery Jeffrey. What's your favorite dinosaur?
I don't have a lot of strong feelings about favorite dinosaurs, I got to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. T-Rex?
You don't even have one?
Stegosaurus?
T-Rex? Stegosaurus? What do you like about the Stegosaurus the best? What's your favorite attribute of the Stegosaurus?
I don't know.
Tell me one thing the Stegosaurus does.
It eats. I don't know. I didn't know that we were going to go into dinosaurs. I would have brushed up a little bit.
Were you not a dinosaur kid growing up?
No, not really. I mean, I watched The Land Before Time. Does that count? Does that make me an expert?
That counts. You can cite a famous dinosaur. Then you can tell me specifically the name of.
I've got a specific one. Sue. You know about Sue?
I know about Sue. I've worked with Sue.
Do you actually know about Sue?
You talking about at the Field Museum?
Yeah, at the Field Museum in Chicago.
Yeah, they have to move Sue when the party band comes in to play in that lobby.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a Sue deck of cards. My sister and I did back in the day. Because when we lived in Illinois, when we were kids, you know, we lived in like central Illinois, so we'd like go up to Chicago and, you know, see how they live in the big city, and like we'd go to the Field Museum. So I went there like a good amount of times. They also had a Disney Quest place that was fun. This is definitely a tangent. But it's funny, I literally said that and I saw a stream viewer go away while I was looking at the numbers. So maybe no more tangents. But so are you done with your questions? We can get back to the YouTubes.
Sure.
Didn't really miss much. I was kind of expecting to miss a bunch of questions or comments and things. But 2Man365 says Laskies are small to him. And I would agree. I kind of feel Laskies are small, but not necessarily small, but they're narrow. Like I wish that they went further, you know, that direction on my face when I play them. We're talking about the two mouthpieces. I don't know about the. Maybe that's probably true of the trombone ones too, but. Especially with the tuba
I have very
ones.
limited experience with the trombone mouthpieces, but I remember thinking that it was kind of a long thing. But I was definitely hearing with my eyes and not with my
Yeah, I mean, you can believe anything you want to
ears.
believe sometimes.
Right.
But cool. It looks like, I mean, maybe this is just a good place to wind down because we're not, you know, turning away a bunch of questions. But
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for watching this live stream for however long you were here. And all the questions, a lot of good questions. We've been flirting with the idea of moving this later a bit. So maybe starting, 9 p.m. Central Time is a time. So it would be starting in 20 minutes. So maybe that's a route that we'll go. Not really sure. We're juggling people in 2 different time zones for the stream itself, and then obviously anybody else can be anywhere in the world. So. But yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, thank you all for being on, and we will see you on the next stream.
There you have it.